What about Abe Lucas, though?
Yeah, so Abe Lucas is an interesting guy from the standpoint of, it's always been kind of, I don't want to say fishy because they're giving us good information, but I'm just like, there's something that doesn't add up with a guy being that young, and it almost sounds like he has an old guy injury. So they've tried to be really careful with him, but Schneider talked about, some of the caution that they're using as far as putting Abe Lucas back out on the field.
We're going to play the long game with him and make sure we're doing things appropriately. Like, this is for his career. It's not just, for the 2024 season. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by Abe, and which also is the right thing for the Seattle Seahawks. And, we have to be careful with it. Sam and David Strickland and those guys have a great plan for him, and we'll keep working that plan. And it has nothing to do with Abe's, work ethic or anything. He's attacked this thing as much as he possibly can. So it's just where we are right now. Yeah,
and he's talking about the trainers there, David Strickland and Sam. So those guys do a really good job. So, I think the one question everybody had is this next one that Schneider answers is that, what does that mean for the rest of the year?
I don't. No. I think we're just being as cautious as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think they kind of ask, is there concern he won't play at all this season? The cautious thing, yes, it's understandable. Also concerning about what you and Bob have talked about, I think everyone has. What does it mean degenerative-wise? I mean, is this something that he's going to have to deal with the rest of his career, and he's able to play through it a little bit like he did last year, where he's hurt for most of the season, he comes back, he plays for a few games, and then all of a sudden it flares up again. So if you're dealing with that, how long do you still, not cut bait, but how long do you have him as someone that you're relying on? Because it was a good point that Bump and Stacy brought up yesterday, that it feels like this season the Seahawks almost prepared like they wouldn't have Abe Lucas. And I'm curious what you think about that. Not all season, but they went in knowing certainly they wouldn't have him for the start of the season, but they had a plan that if Abe Lucas isn't able to play, we're ready now. And this is just kind of added bonus. Instead of last year, where you don't expect a guy who was such a stalwart as a rookie to then not be available after the first half of the first game for most of the season. From that aspect, it's encouraging, but from the long-term viability of Abe Lucas as a day-in, day-out starter, this is where I just have some hesitancy about how reliable can you get and how reliable will he be?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up just because I think that John Schneider is thinking about backups and depth all the time, and whether we're hearing about it or not. And this is a case where all of a sudden it comes into focus because you're talking about with Abe Lucas, what it feels. I'm not trying to push the panic button, but to me, it feels like it's a long-term problem. Possibly. So, it's not just about depth and getting him, a series here and a series there so he can rest his knee. It's more about planning for the future. But I think John does that at every single position. And just as he's very disciplined about that from what I've seen over the years. And he's been here a long time. This is his 15th year here. So, you get kind of the style of how he prepares. That's what you do. I mean, that's what everybody has to do with, as far as like performing, you have to get the next guy ready. And, and I remember Chuck Knox would always say, hey, get the next guy in there. He used to use a different term for it. But, it's something that you always have to do. And so I think, it's not anything new for Schneider. I think he's a guy that, has been planning for that. And, did we get to this one about his assessment of the offensive line just in general? Because,
no, I was about to
because I think
direct you that way.
We've talked about him, Abe Lucas, so much that, we haven't really talked about the rest of the offensive line. And I don't want to say, well, it's just one guy. Your right tackle is obviously very important, but a lot of times, like we've talked about a lot on the show, Bob and I, is that it's kind of like a starting rotation. You have a 4 and a 5, probably. You have your guy that's like the rock. And by the way, that guy this year, the guy who emerged, is Charles Cross. Mm-hmm. And I heard that from Ryan Grubb. And he was talking about not only what kind of a dude he is, just a great teammate and person, but just the leadership and what he's done on the field. And we talked about him needing to take that step and sort of grab that job by the throat and be like, I'm the leader, kind of like a Walter Jones type. And he really has been that guy. But, you've got you're never going to have, everybody. Well, unless you're the Mariners, you're going to have 1 through 5 that are all like all-stars, but it typically doesn't happen. So, but John, just talked about his assessment of where he feels like just the offensive line in general is at right now.
Oh, I think it's going to be a work in progress, but we like the guys, we like the group, like Scott, Scott and Coach Nugent, those guys do a great job working in tandem with everybody, with the whole group. It's a lot of guys, it's a big group to work with. Yeah, we like the group, but it's, again, there's like moving pieces in there, like so many left tackles completely different than a right tackle, and left, the guards, we have 3 centers right now, so yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and real quick, let's get to that. I mean, I thought that was one of the more interesting things, Mike, about the center position, because Connor Williams was in Miami playing center and really good. He had a knee injury, and so they really like him. I think they value him a lot because of the fact that he's very versatile. He can play guard and tackle. But I thought that was one of the more interesting things when they did the cut down. They have 3 centers, and I'm sorry, I do think it says a lot about what Olu, I think they wanted him. They wanted Olu to take the step that Derek Hall did. And it looks like he either didn't, or they think the opportunity of getting Connor Williams is really interesting.